Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama.
Traduction français.
कुंज बिहारी राधा माधवा कुंज बिहारी Namo Om Vishnapadaya Krishna Krishnaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gaurani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyadi Vastrayade Shodarine Shri Krishna Chaitanya Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare Shri Ram Sankirtan Ki Jai. Hare Krishna everyone, so thank you so much. So this evening I think we can just do questions and answers. So just to recap, yesterday morning we talked a little bit about community, about friendly relationships, and about how spiritual absorption is actually the greatest wealth of a devotee. In the world, ultimately, there are no solutions, but the only solution is when we find an absorption in something higher. And then the things of this world don't affect us in the same way. Vairagya means detachment, but it's explained that Vairagya also has a double meaning, Vishesha Raga, or a very special type of attachment. And therefore, when one is very specially attached to the spiritual energy, to the spiritual and to Krishna, then what happens is that naturally there is a vairagya, a detachment from all of the temporary things of this world. And so we talked a little bit about that this morning as well, when we talked about Chitraketu and how he was mentioning that the life that we lead is like a constant river, and that there are so many emotions, so many events, so many experiences, but everything is in constant flux in the material world, and therefore the devotee learns to take the best from every situation and instead look at spiritual happiness, which is beyond the duality of this world. So these were some points. So let me open it out to all of you and see whether you may have any questions to begin.
Just now, coming.
You can say it.
I can say it and then, okay, I'll just repeat. Thank you, Maharaj, for recapping our session with you. Thank you. You mentioned about absorption. Absorption then leads to sort of, or rather attentiveness leads to absorption. And as we practice this wonderful process, maybe you can explain what are those component parts that makes us be absorbed, and then also the attentiveness part of the whole process. So in terms of the component parts that makes us more attentive, it then leads to full absorption like that.
So what are the components of absorption? So in any activity, we can say that there are three broad components. One is the activity itself. The second one is the understanding behind the activity. And the third one is the heart, the devotion, the sincerity within which it's done. So to be absorbed means to give the best of yourself in all three of these things when you do any spiritual activity. It means, number one, when you're doing the activity, to prioritize it, to not multitask it, to not to create a situation where you can be fully present in that activity. That's the first thing that we must prioritize. And then, so if you take, for example, japa, so how do you become, what does it mean to be absorbed in japa? So first thing is it means to prioritize, to do it at the best time of day, to give it the best priority, attention, to not multitask, all of these kind of things. And the second thing is we have to understand with our intelligence what are we doing here. When we chant, we have to chant with Sambandha Gyan, so we have to understand, what am I doing? I'm a soul, I'm trying to connect back with Krishna. This is the process. We have to understand the depth, the meaning of the activity that we're doing. Why is japa considered so powerful? What will happen to me if I prioritize this activity? We should be very much orientated in our intelligence why I should be doing this. And then the third thing is the heart. We have to bring the heart to that activity. So we have to bring some genuine desperation, some genuine calling, some genuine longing for Krishna. And then with these three components, it becomes an absorbed activity. Otherwise, what often happens is on the physical level, on the intellectual level, and on the heart level, we are somewhere else. And therefore, Gaur Kishore Das Babaji says some people's chanting is like firing blanks. There's a lot of noise, but it's like a gun with blanks. It doesn't actually penetrate anything. So, like that. Bahu Janma Karijati Shravana Kirtan Tabutana Bhai Krishna Pade Prema. If we chant but we don't bring our full activity, our full intelligence and our full heart to it, then it will remain dry. So it's not just about the activity, but it's about doing it with quality on all of these levels. Does that help?
In terms of reading, japa you mentioned, reading is the same thing?
Same kind of thing, yeah. Same things. Yeah.
Talking about japa, I was in a discussion with some friends of mine some time ago about japa. One of my friends was saying that we should chant japa however we do it, even if it's watching a movie or being engaged in something else. It's better than not doing it. I'm saying basically, well, what's wrong with doing it? It's better to watch a movie and chant japa than not chant japa. And my other friend was saying, well, actually no, because chanting japa is one of the 10 offenses, inattentive chanting. So then if you're chanting japa and not being attentive, you're actually making things worse for yourself. So and you kind of like...
So is it better to chant no japa or inattentive japa?
Just chant Hare Krishna.
Yeah, basically my other friend was saying it's better that you do kirtan in that case than chant japa. Just chant like Harinam or do kirtan rather than chanting japa, if you're going to do it inattentively, or if you can't do it with attention and concentration.
Again, where are we going? Like, what is the orientation? Japa is given to us by our acharyas. Japa is given to us by Srila Prabhupada. We often say, someone once said that, which made a lot of sense to me. They said, japa is the closest thing to pure devotional service in the conditioned state. Because practically it's the only devotional service in which you don't get any extraneous external benefits. You don't necessarily get something that you can see and nobody else sees you doing it. And therefore, japa is actually an activity which has a high level of purity. That's why it's hard, but that's why it's also extremely powerful. And therefore, what I would say is that we always have to try to keep some contact with japa, with the holy name. It's of course, some kirtan is our process, it's congregational chanting, but still there's something very special about chanting japa because it's a very individual, it's a very personal, it's a very, very intimate way of connecting with Krishna. And yes, it's a very challenging way because there's no external immediate benefit that you get from it. So I don't think it's positive if a devotee is a resigned state of mind where they're just like, I'm not going to be able to chant attentive japa, therefore I shouldn't do anything. Because where is the progression there? At one point we have to start somewhere. And therefore, even if it's 1 round, even if it's 2 rounds or 4 rounds, whatever one can do, but to always keep contact with this because it's a very sacred way of connecting with Krishna. I think staying away from it because of fear of being inattentive, I think there should be a greater fear that I stay away from this and then where will my spiritual life go? I think that's a bigger fear. So, I think, sorry Maharaj, would you know? Yeah. No, so I feel that it's, when we say something like that I'm not going to do it attentively, therefore I should just not do it. And I'm scared of doing it inattentively, therefore I'm not going to do it. To me, it just feels like a bigger fear is if I become disconnected from this activity, where is my spiritual standing? I'm like an orphan. So it is hard, it is difficult, and I think in our movement many of us struggle with japa, but maybe we don't talk about it openly enough. Everyone has struggles, it's hard, because like I said, it's a very pure thing, but it's very powerful as well. This is why I say.
Well, actually the reason we were talking about it is because another friend of ours, he told us that he would chant japa while he was watching a movie, and saying, well, it's better that I do it like that than I don't do it at all. Where the inattentive chanting thing, well, if you're like,
so his argument was, I will do it.
We've all chanted japa where we're kind of half spaced out or walking around, and I often see the devotees like, going for a walk around with their feet back in their hand, and so it's like, that's like we're trying to make an effort, it's difficult, but then actually saying that, well, it's better that I chant it while I'm watching a movie than not chanting at all, because I promised to chant 16 rounds to my spiritual master. And in this case, actually, the spiritual master said, well, yeah, go ahead and do it that way if you can't do it any other way. And we were saying, well, that's inattentive, like purposely chanting inattentively, so you're like purposely, we all make offenses somehow or other, but it's not necessarily on purpose, but there's like you're purposely chanting inattentively. So how can that be beneficial for your bhakti, since you're like purposely committing one of the 10 offenses?
If he doesn't do it, he's disobeying the order of the spiritual master. Maharaj, would you like to say anything?
That's an ongoing topic. I was just going to read something. Now, this was put out on, I don't know where it was put out, but it was put out on one of the positive medias. And it's called Chant Anyway. The devotee, and I can't find it, I searched through the so-called reference where it comes from, I could not find it. They said it's by Bhakti Vinod Thakur and Sharanagati, and I could not find it. Anyway, it goes like this. Your mind is wandering all over the universe when you chant. Chant anyway. Your mind is wandering to the past and future when you chant. Chant anyway. You are not able to concentrate on Krishna's names while you chant. Chant anyway. You have no taste for chanting. Chant anyway. You have lusty desires. Chant anyway. You are making offenses in chanting. Chant anyway. You are not praying to Krishna to help you chant better. Chant anyway. You often chant late at night. Chant anyway. Kind of goes on. At least chant. Chant. I mean, it's like so many things in that category, aren't they? Like watering it down, you know. So many things. But at least some connection is, something is there again. It's an interesting topic. And of course, this is why. And again, I mean, okay, this is a Shastric verse. There is no vow like chanting the holy name, no knowledge superior to it, no meditation which comes anywhere near it. And it gives the highest result. No penance is equal to it, and nothing is as potent or powerful as the holy name. Chanting is the greatest act of piety and the supreme refuge. Even the words of the Vedas do not possess sufficient power to describe its magnitude. Chanting is the highest path to liberation, peace, and eternal life. It is the pinnacle of devotion, the heart's joyous proclivity and attraction, and the best form of remembrance of the Supreme Lord. The holy name has appeared solely for the benefit of the living entities as their Lord and Master, their supreme worshipable object, and their spiritual guide and mentor. Whoever continuously chants Lord Krishna's holy name, even in his sleep, can easily realize that the name is a direct manifestation of Krishna himself, in spite of the influences of Kali Yuga. That's supposed to be, I don't know where, but it's supposed to be from Bhaktivinoda Thakur. I couldn't find it. That verse is Adi Purana, of course, but the first part, chant anyway. Maybe somebody made it up. Sounds good anyway.
Is he talking about japa or kirtan?
Not necessarily.
So that japa and kirtan is the same thing?
And that doesn't say japa or kirtan. It says chant.
See, my sense, Governor, is that if someone even is feeling like, I'm going to watch a movie and still chant japa, like it means they must have some faith in japa. It might be compromised faith, but they have some faith that they're even going to sit there. So at least if they keep some connection with the activity, something at some point may awaken.
Sound vibration is there.
Yeah.
Sound vibration is there. It's actually kirtan in one sense. Technically, japa is internal, mental. Term we use for an activity, but in reality, it's an internal, silent focus on the mantra. And vocal, is described, technically speaking, as kirtan.
Yeah.
So it's also a kind of a kirtan, whether you're singing or chanting on your feet, whatever. It's a kind of a kirtan.
Because if you think about like, okay, they're going to be sitting in front of, but then you could say, where do you draw the line? Like you could then say, like someone could say, oh, I just had this massive argument with someone and my mind's all over the place. Therefore, definitely I'm not going to be able to chant attentively. Therefore, it's going to be an offense. So at what point do you say, I'm pure enough, I'm attentive enough to start chanting? Like, where along the continuum do you qualify that now you're not going to be offensive? Where basically everyone is offensive at different, most people are at different degrees. Therefore this verse is often quoted, Nama parada yuktanam Nama yeva harantyagam avishranti prayuktani tanye varta karani. This from Padma Purana. Even if in the beginning one chants the Hare Krishna mantra with offenses, one will become free from such offenses by chanting again and again. But if you're not, like, you have to be in it to win it. But the moment you become divorced from the process, like, I know you're saying then instead do kirtan, but this is what I can say. But yeah, if others have comments on this, yeah, go Swami.
Well, it's difficult to say, no, better not chant Hare Krishna. It doesn't look like something good to say that. So, okay, chanting Hare Krishna anyway is wonderful. One thing about watching a movie while chanting, Krishna is reciprocating. When we chant Hare Krishna, that's the principle. So whatever we focus on, it comes back to us. It satisfies the desire. If you have material desire, kama, samata, bhava, something like that. But if we watch a movie while chanting japa, we may be focusing on the type of life which we are watching, and Krishna may satisfy this desire, which may not be the best. But, whatever, as you say, if we remember Krishna, this is very, very powerful. And even it is said that you remember with transcendental lusty desires like the gopis, or with fear and anger like Kamsa, and you get some benefit. Kamsa was liberated. But it's better to go to go to the positive way than to get the influence of bad association on some movie, and Krishna will satisfy this consciousness.
Yeah, and in the 6th canto of the Bhagavatam, there's also the famous verse Shanketyam Parihasyam Vai Shtovam Helanameva Va Vaikuntanam Agrahanam Asheshaga Haram Vidum. This is in the Ajamyo pastime. So there is mentioned Shanketyam Parihasyam. If one chants jokingly, if one chants neglectfully, if one chants indicating something else, Vaikuntanam Agrahanam, the name is powerful. It can have the power to transform someone, even unknowingly. So it's always better to be in contact with the name than not. But then, of course, there are better ways to be in contact with the name. But you don't seem convinced.
Krishna is very, very merciful.
Well, I think that if you, let's say, for someone who hasn't made the choice to step onto the path of bhakti, in that case, yes. But for someone who's made the choice, that I mean, it was a pretty heated discussion between us. But for someone who has made that choice, say, okay, I make the choice to make these vows and take that path. To say that, well, I chant while I'm watching a movie, it just kind of sounds, well, are you being like really honest with you? I mean, I'm not one to speak. I've made those vows and I haven't upheld them myself. But I would have a hard time saying that, well, I'll just chant while I'm watching a movie, because for me that's kind of cheating or not being totally honest with oneself, with myself.
But then not chanting at all is also not being honest.
Sorry, what's that?
Not chanting at all is also because you made a vow, and so my point is.
I agree with that as well. But just then, my other friend was saying, well, he was kind of agreeing with me, but he added that then chanting offensively, you're basically doing yourself a disservice because you're purposely making a choice to chant offensively, while you know that is not the path that you've taken.
But you're also purposely making a choice to chant, so there's some good there also.
Which is better than making the choice not to chant. That's what you're saying. He was saying basically then do kirtan instead of chanting japa offensively. Just sing while you're working or while you're doing things, and sing the holy name.
Do both.
Does that depend which kind of movie you watch? If you watch
Actually, put little Krishna.
No, it wasn't Krishna.
Star Wars, was it?
Yeah, more likely.
On this.
Just on this point about Maharaj touched on it. It's the intention, right? It's the intention why they're chanting in the first place. So if the intention is right, then you do whatever in order to make that intention come true.
Because basically it's like a number thing. I promise to chant 16 rounds, so I'll chant 16 rounds whichever way I chant them, because it's the 16 that's important.
But for most of us, if we're honest, it is a number thing also. It's going to take time to get there. I don't know if I could sit here and say, no, just don't chant until you're, somehow, I can't say that here. It just doesn't seem to me to be the right thing. But,
Thank you.
okay, Raja, can I say
Yeah,
on this?
it's about, I think it was in the Hajjamil case, about hell.
For translation.
Sorry, because of the online devotees. Thank you so much.
About hell, there is 3 levels of severity of punishment in hell. The lightest punishment is when we are practicing or doing sinful activities because you are mad. So that's the punishment will be small. Medium punishment is then you are normal, you are conscious, but you still, or you are believing in God or what is right and what is wrong, still you do these sinful activities, this medium punishment. But the greatest punishment is to do sinful activities with pure atheism, when you are as being an atheist. That's the worst. 3 levels of severity. So I think we're in the second.
Where is this described?
I think it's I've read it in Bhagavatam somewhere. Maybe the Ajamil somewhere. Yeah. So we shall.
So the conclusion is chant.
Huh?
So the conclusion is chant.
Better than be an atheist than to be an atheist.
So, quickly, I want to talk about offenses, but before that, this morning in my japa, your presence, of course, helped me. I had just a flash about the community. I don't know much about the story, but I had a flash of Lalita Madhava before he died, and he told me he came to for the Christmas invitation at Dhananjaya house, and I want to honor the people who stayed here. I may be a bit emotional, but forgive me. But the elders here who hold the space for all of us, he told me that sometimes they only ate potatoes because they had no money. And it's many people here who are here in this room, and some who are gone. Many. You have all the elders here. The Swami here. I don't the name getting away from my head, but Swami here and the other, and also the presidents and the people who stayed here and held the torch of light, no matter what happened, money, no money, the president who don't sleep because they try to get money to maintain this place, and many other things. And I think it's important when you said, 2 days ago, you said you have to walk your talk and take responsibility and be the change you want to happen here. And that touched me, but I want to ask for me and for all of us to really help the people who held the fire here, no matter what. And I'm thinking of Vishesha, Gorangi, many here, and all the women who who are behind the men here, the wives and all the women who do work without saying nothing. I just feel it's important we honor, then we can create this community stronger in gratefulness to attract young people, because it's an older community and we need the fire of the young one with kids and future family to feed and nurture this place. And to do this, I feel it's really important we hold hands and do whatever we can to do little service to attract the young people who, by giving love and attentiveness and kindness, then everybody can. I live in Switzerland, I cannot come here often, but I really feel we're in a crossing point, and it's very important because many of our elders are going to go somewhere with Prabhupada, somewhere not, but they are also the teachers, and we can teach them also, and they can teach us. And I really want to make this strong, because I feel New Mayapur is going very well in new ways, but in the same time it's very fragile also. And that's what I wanted to say, to thank everybody for that. And then, if I may, offenses. So when I heard...
Just say something on that.
Oh, sorry, Maharaja, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. When Srila Prabhupada was trying to establish the temple in Juhu, Mumbai, and he had so many problems, so many challenges, so many obstacles. Then finally, after a long, long struggle, Prabhupada fulfilled his desire to build that temple for Radha Ras Bihari. And then later on, Prabhupada said to Giriraj Maharaj, that was a good fight. Someone should write a story about it. And of course, Maharaj did write that book about the whole Juhu struggle. But I was discussing with him, and one of the most important things in our movement is actually history. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes didn't end 500 years ago. Actually, Prabhupada said they're continuing and they're going on even today. And if you look in the history of many of our projects, this is actually Mahaprabhu's pastimes. What devotees did was superhuman, is inconceivable. Maybe when they were actually doing it, maybe they didn't even realize what was happening. That something very, very special was happening. Because this movement, devotees were getting empowered because of their commitment. And so one thing that wherever I'm going now, that I encourage the local devotees to do, is to document the history, the stories, the sacrifices, the incredible miracles, the struggles. It's so important when we come into a place to understand. It's gratitude to understand everyone and everything that came before us so that we're able to be here. So we were also recently talking about this at the manor, that how can we document more of the stories of the devotees. Like for example, in the manor we had Mother Kalangana, who for 40 years made Krishna's Mangalarti suites, up by 1 a.m. every day, chanted all her rounds before she went into the kitchen. And not a day off, just kept going through all kinds of turbulence. And we need to document the stories. These are living saints. The saints are not just the people of the past. They lived, they walked amongst us. So in our Krishna consciousness movement, we have more wealth than we may immediately appreciate. And it's so important to document history. So yes, thank you for raising this point. And Srila Prabhupada's disciples are, I sometimes feel like Srila Prabhupada's disciples are Prabhupada's greatest gift to the world, actually. Because what I realized after some time is that if it wasn't for Prabhupada's disciples, people like me would know nothing about Srila Prabhupada. Because they published Prabhupada's books. They maintained Prabhupada's temples. They gave us their memories of Srila Prabhupada. They photoed Prabhupada. They videoed him. They audio recorded him. Practically, they're the ones that gave us all the access to Srila Prabhupada. So, yeah, thank you for raising this. And in a community, it's so important to honor, to learn, to... There'll be a time in the future, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, where someone will be amazed that you had contact with a Prabhupada disciple. Just as we are amazed now when we hear someone had contact with Srila Prabhupada. Someone was like, wow, you knew that disciple of Prabhupada. It's very rare. So yeah, we must document history. History is such an important part of keeping a movement going. The way a movement goes on is someone makes a big sacrifice, and when the next generation see that sacrifice, then they realize the only way I can reciprocate with this is if I make a sacrifice. And when they make that sacrifice and people see it, they realize the only way I can reciprocate is if I make a sacrifice. And that collective sacrifice of every generation ensures that a movement continues. So...
Can I just finish with something very quickly? I also think that it's important for us to acknowledge all the people who are around here, who are not coming often, but who are in the other town, and who are maybe now a bit cold of coming back because hurt and stories, and then we can maybe, I don't know, all how to do, but maybe bring them prasad to let them know we still love them and they can feel welcome back, or some ways to bring them back and honor all the people who are maybe not coming often, or Gaudiya or whatever. I don't know the story, but to fill this heart up and to help us to grow, because time is ticking very fast now for all of us, in a way. And the last thing is these offenses. When we talked, I don't know the offenses, I didn't yet learn this. But when I hear your friend here, for me, offenses feel like death sentence. So it's like sweetness of mantra, bitterness of the mantra when it's passing through our head, or the story. So how do you, when you knew, you're not so scared about those offenses, because they seem like it's a big deal, especially offenses to the devotee, and I made already 1,000 here. So what do you do? Then it's not such a big, huge monster, then
You're saying otherwise you're just nervous all the time that you may make an offense. And
me, not too much, because I talk to people and I go say, I'm sorry, but I know I made many offenses with you, and many here, other elders, and this one here. So how do you make this like a little gentler, and you're not so scared, and you make it at all wrong somehow? I'm exaggerating, but even a little bit. Thank you.
We can just take all the offenses and look at them in a positive way, and ask ourselves, what can we do positively to make sure we never do this negative thing? So if the offense is that one should not blaspheme the Vaishnavas, then it's not that just one should walk around saying, now I have to make sure I don't blaspheme anyone, otherwise I'm done. It means that one should look at that offense and say, if this displeases Krishna, then it means what pleases Krishna most is when I'm encouraging, when I'm empowering, when I'm doing something which gives life and enthusiasm to others. And therefore, when we turn the negatives into positives, then not only do we avoid the negatives, but we gain great wealth in our spiritual life. So the offenses that are there in Shastra are not just meant to make us scared, like scare us into making sure we don't do anything wrong, but they're also meant to be a key which show us what to do right, that can make our spiritual life take off on another level. So I think when we look at offenses in that way and we turn it around into something positive, then we don't become so like overwhelmed or bewildered by it, but we say this is a great opportunity.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Why do we commit offences, Maharaj? They're never ending, huh? Why do we actually do it? Is there a way we can get to the root, or what? I mean, you're dealing with one offence and another offence and this offence. There seems to be no end of fences on the planet. Fences or offences? There seem to be one. Suggest anything we can do to get more to the root of it? It seems, whatever, some kind of root.
It seems all offenses have their root in insensitivity. And the reason why we're insensitive is because we're very self-absorbed. That's why, all the offenses and all these details, I think they're given to us because it's meant to make us more sensitive in terms of how we act, how we speak, how we carry ourselves. But it seems that we've become very, very insensitive to everything and everyone around us because we've become more and more absorbed in ourselves. I don't know if that's something which comes to mind.
On this subject.
Yes.
On this subject matter, I had a realization when I was doing the Vrajmandal Parikrama. Yeah. About this subject of being offensive or disease, I had a realization when I was doing Vrajmandal Parikrama, 1 month, 600 kilometers, I think, 20 kilometers a day. And at a certain point, I took my shoes off. And I had this realization, this is pleasing the Dham, Pleasing. Yeah, it's pleasing to Dham that we go barefoot. Because if you look at the offenses to the Dham you can make, it's you walk with shoes, your 10 generations become lepers, it's terrible, So I had this realization that rather than to think about, I should not do this, I should not do that, I should not do this, I should not do that, but being positive and think, how can I please this person or being pleased? And this is save the situation, being, to be able to focus on how to please the person or the Dham or whatever, than to think about, if I do this, if I do that, what will happen?
Yeah. Thank you.
Attends, il y a Gorangui qui veut parler avant, puis après on va passer.
Okay, so you were talking about preserving the
history.
The history. I'm right in the middle of organizing the archives of the French theatre, and in fact, there's already a lot of things, about past devotees. We got our Gopal Swami Prabhu. He wrote a wonderful La Belle Histoire, the beautiful story. It's amazing what happened in this theatre. So I'm inviting everybody to read it. It's in French, and that's one story. And then I wrote a story about Mahima Bhushana Prabhu, a disciple of Prabhupada. It was published in a book, and she died in a car accident. She was the wife of the Sankirtan leader. So you get a whole story, and then you get all magazines. We have lots of Bhakti magazine, and there's lots of stories preaching in North Africa to the Arabs. I mean, that's organizing all this. I need help, by the way. And also, I did a magazine 20 years ago, Senapati Bhakta, to have more communication, because we got so many, technological thing and but we don't really communicate with each other, really deeply, just sometimes very superficial. And I like personally written things and magazines and so yeah, so I need help because I can't even scan anything these days anyway. So the thing is that we are too addicted to these little things, you know. I can't even talk. You know, I mean, it's useful. I'm not saying it's not useful, but sometimes we can't even say Haribol to somebody, you know. I mean, it comes to an extreme, you know. Can't live without this little thing. And in fact, there's a story about Prabhupada. I think it was in LA, and somebody installed a telephone. It was at the beginning, you know. Anyway, so, and then Prabhupada said, they called me at midnight to ask me how I'm doing. Come on, midnight, I'm sleeping. He said, and then 2 days later, he said, get this phone out of here. You know? So anyway, so it's happening, you know, this yatra has been going through a lot of things. I mean, I was not always in this yatra. I was in India and America, but I'm discovering lots of things by reading again the magazine and the newspapers. There was a whole campaign to save New Mayapur. I don't know how many times we had a campaign, save New Mayapur, and or save yourself from New Mayapur sometimes. Anyway, so please help.
Thank you so much for your question. If anyone wants to donate their phones, I'll donate their phones to you.
Oui, bonsoir. Merci Maharaj pour ce que tu nous as dit. Plus fort? Oui, parce que moi je cours. Oui, on a parlé beaucoup de l'absorption. Je sais que moi, juste pour clore le chapitre, c'est que le cerveau, il n'aime pas faire deux choses à la fois. Il est évident que si on fait autre chose, on est moins absorbé. Alors moi, je voudrais poser ma question, c'est que Prabhupada, il parle beaucoup du côté scientifique du Mahamantra. Maharaj, vous avez parlé de la puissance. Alors, quelle est l'explication? Parce que moi, par expérience, quand je récite 6 mantras, je me sens aussi bien que si je fais 1h30 de yoga. Et ça, je l'ai constaté sur une année entière. Et je pense que il n'y a pas de hasard. C'est que vraiment, alors, ça peut être quoi? Peut-être que Prabhupada en parle souvent de ce côté scientifique du Mahamantra.
Traduit.
So we were speaking about absorption in the Mahamantra, and he says that through his experience, he wanted to know what are the scientific effect of the Mahamantra, because what he noticed in his own practice is that by chanting 6 rounds, it has the same effect on him as performing Hatha Yoga. And he would like to hear about it.
And he also precise that the brain could not do 2 things at a time.
He mentioned that absorption also, he knows that scientists says that we cannot focus our mind on 2 things at the same time. So just practicing japa has a lot of benefit. Is there a scientific evidence?
The effects of japa are felt over time. It's not that immediately you are seeing the benefits, like your heart rate goes down and all of these kind of things. Like, these are maybe some physical things may be there. The real benefits of japa are seen over a period of time. So what you'll see is that as you chant more attentive japa, then the first thing is your desires will begin to change. And your desires will begin to become more and more orientated and Krishna-centered. The second thing is that your character will change. Yes, you may not become a completely different person, but what will happen is that Vaishnava qualities will start to manifest more and more. The third thing that you'll see as you chant japa more your habits, your lifestyle will change. What you're attracted to and how you live and how you function, this will all change. And ultimately, from japa, you become more connected to Krishna. You feel more of a presence of Krishna. One time, Prabhupada was on a morning walk, and then he asked the devotees, how do you know that Krishna exists? So all devotees gave different answers. One of them said, because you said, Prabhupada. Prabhupada said, that's not a good argument. He said, because it makes philosophical sense. Prabhupada said, not a good argument. And then one devotee said, I know that Krishna exists because when I chant japa, I feel the presence of Krishna. And Prabhupada said, that's the right answer. So it's a relationship, and many of these things you can't perceive immediately. It takes time, it requires a sustained effort. Like that.
Il y a quelques mois, j'ai créé un groupe sur WhatsApp qui s'appelle Priorité au Saint-Nom. Quelqu'un peut traduire?
Quel traduire?
So a few months ago, I created a WhatsApp group which is
Priorité au Saint-Nom.
So priority to the holy name.
Et parce qu'en fait, dans mon dernier voyage en revenant de l'Inde, en Inde, j'ai vraiment réalisé que c'est en donnant la priorité au Saint-Nom que ma vie spirituelle allait être beaucoup plus efficient, beaucoup plus...
So because the last journey I did it in India, I realized how the holy names was gonna expand my spiritual life.
Ça doit être la priorité.
It should be the priority.
Et je ressens que ça pourrait être une grande aide si les dévots entre eux partageaient leur réalisation durant le japa.
And so I felt that it could be of great help that the devotee could share what they feel during chanting the japa.
Mais c'est extrêmement difficile à obtenir ce nectar. J'approche des dévots, je leur demande quelle est leur réalisation et très souvent ils disent rien. Alors je ne sais pas comment inspirer les dévots à partager leur réalisation à travers le chant des saints.
So we say that it's very difficult to obtain the nectar of chanting the holy name, and he asked to some devotees, but he didn't get a lot of answer about the realization of chanting the holy name, and he was wondering how it could happen.
Yeah. Et peut-être pour déclencher peut-être un début de quelque chose, est-ce que Maharaj, vous pourriez nous partager quelques réalisations que vous avez par rapport à votre relation avec le Saint-Nom?
I think you understood already.
What was the translation?
So now he asking to Maharaj what is his realization with chanting.
To get things going, to get things running,
yeah.
You can start off so that to encourage other devotees to participate in this WhatsApp group.
Like a big bang.
Some of your chant like ball rolling.
Like a nuclear reaction.
Yeah, sure. I think there are two reasons why devotees don't necessarily openly share their realizations on japa. I think one reason is that naturally a devotee has that humility. They don't want to advertise, they don't want to necessarily promote themselves or present themselves as experiencing something beyond so they may not be so confident to put it on a public forum like that. The other reason is, I think, the realizations and the experiences of japa are sometimes very, very personal and very difficult to explain. Because it's a relationship. If someone asks you, like, why do you love this person in your life? It's a very intimate thing, it's a very personal thing. And the subtleties of it, someone may not be able to fully appreciate. So I think sometimes devotees may find it difficult to articulate, how can I say this in a way that will be relevant to other people? But you're definitely right. There has to be a sense in which we hear about experiences and transformation from the process. If we only keep telling people to do the process, but there's no talk of the transformation and the experiences, it can sometimes feel a little dry and just beautiful. One thing that keeps me going in japa is, I think, the only one activity that I've experienced in my life that's helped me to be completely present in the moment. And it's not always like this in japa, but I have experienced this on different occasions in japa, where it's the one activity in which I felt completely present in the moment. I wish it was like that every day, but it's not like that every day. But I have experienced that. I've not experienced that kind of thing in any other activity, where you almost lose perception of the past or the future. And to me, what that tells me is that the holy name and the presence of Krishna is so strong if one chants attentively and in an absorbed way. The presence of Krishna is so strong that it has the ability to immediately bring one into the presence. So those moments inspire me. I think another way you can get inspired by japa is not necessarily trying to hear from people's realization, but look at the lives of those people who chant attentive japa. Sometimes their life is the message. If you look at individuals who have built a relationship with the holy name, and you see what they're able to do in their life as a result of that, that can also inspire us. Maybe others can share their realization.
Je vais parler en français. Excuse-moi si tu veux bien traduire ça. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much, Maharaj. Adjamil, est-ce qu'il a chanté le salon de Narayan purement? Comment expliquer qu'il est passé d'une vie pécheresse, très pécheresse, et en quelques instants, il est arrivé à une mentalité où il était abandonné.
So he was wondering if Ajamil did chant the holy name purely. I already forgot, because he had the sinful life.
Parce qu'il menait une vie très pécheresse.
Yeah, has a very sinful life.
Et il est passé à une conscience bien supérieure.
And he quickly goes on a very higher consciousness, and quite sudden, compared to somebody who's chant.
Ajamil got a second chance. It's not that in that immediate moment he attained pure love for Krishna, but he got a second chance. He was freed from the Yamabhutas, And then later on it's explained that Ajamil went to Haridwar, and then there he perfected his spiritual consciousness. So the advantage that Ajamil had is that even though he was chanting, indicating something else, I mentioned this verse, Shanketyam Parihasyam Vaishtovam Helanam Eva Va. Even though he was chanting, indicating something else, he wasn't chanting with a materialistic objective in mind. So in that sense, he was pure. In the sense that he was not doing it for a material objective. But it's not that he was pure in terms of his intent to please Krishna by chanting the holy name. But the purity was that he wasn't harboring any material motivation while chanting. And therefore, Narayana, those 4 syllables immediately attracted to the 4 Vishnu Dutas. So, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in the commentary to that, he says that Ajamil received this benefit indicating something else. So imagine how much benefit you can get if you indicate the right thing. He said Ajamil attained this benefit even though he lived a sinful life. So imagine how much if you chant with a sinless life. He said Ajamil chanted and got this benefit even though he did it right at the end of his life. So imagine what happens if you chant throughout your life and like that. So in this way, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is saying that this whole pastime of Ajamil is to teach us the potentiality of the holy name of Krishna. So even chanting, indicating something else, has such power. Ashesha Haranvidu, it can remove sins. Yeah, nice story.
This can be the last one.
Sure.
Well, thank you, Maharaj. I just wanted to add that after I received some japa beats from my mentor, for a few months I was chanting like 4 rounds, 8 rounds, 12 rounds. The first time I chanted 16. So the first time that I was chanting 16 rounds, it was about like 3 months after I received my first japa beats. And my grandmother's funeral was the next day, and I was very sick. And I was up, and I was thinking I'm not going to be able to make it to my grandmother's funeral. And I was very sad, and I was throwing up, and I was like had swollen glands and everything. I said, well, I'll just stay up as late as I can and chant japa. And so I stayed up, and I finished 16 rounds almost exactly at midnight. And then I went to sleep, and the next day I woke up, and I felt completely purified, just like so much better. Went to the funeral, enjoyed myself, had a great time, saw my family, for the first time, and for a long time, haven't seen them since, and so I really enjoyed it. I decided after that I needed to chant 16 rounds every day. And after that, I really lost taste for a lot of other, I used to watch a lot of movies, read a lot of fantasy, and I literally haven't picked up since then any of these, I have a whole closet of books I just would, in the middle of, just left them. Haven't gone back to them, haven't been, canceled my Netflix subscription and things like this. So that's my experience, that I was going to have to maybe friend this devotee, he's slowly losing the taste for probably, I can't imagine that he's fully attentive to the movie if he's chanting at the same time. So he's slowly losing taste for the thing as well.
Thank you for sharing.
I have a question, but I don't know if people wanted to share their experience for japa. So maybe. Sorry. Okay. My question is, thank you, first of all. And I was wondering which advice would you give? Sometimes, often, I really struggle understanding if what I want to do is something that comes from my heart or from my mind. So is there like a Vedic advice about how to listen to your heart and know if it's really your heart speaking, how to know what your heart is saying pretty much?
Mm-hmm. How to know what
your heart is saying.
What your heart is saying.
Thank you.
So our concept is that Krishna is in our heart. Krishna is there residing with us. And Krishna inspires us. And then we have desires from the soul, very pure desires. So the only way that you can contact this voice is if you conquer the mind. In the Bhagavad Gita is mentioned, Jitatmana prashantasya paramatma samahita. For one who has conquered the mind, the super soul is already reached. So, in our life we can see whether we have conquered our mind or not. We can see how many deviant desires come, how many distractions we're affected by, how much we fluctuate in our determination, how much we stray from our path that we know we should be doing. We get, pretty much most of us have a sense of how much we've conquered over our own mind. And to that proportion, we can understand how much of the inspiration that we get is actually from a deep place within us. So therefore, for most, we are struggling with the mind. And therefore the idea is that we have many devotees around us. That doesn't just mean someone who's a guru in that formal regard, that is definitely there, but also many, many friends on the spiritual journey who you can discuss with, who you can open your heart to, and through conversation with them you can actually understand how pure something from within you may be, you know. So like that, it's a process. It's a process to hear your heart. But with purification, it becomes more and more possible. You know? And until then, just have many people that you can speak to, who can verify and guide and clarify your thoughts. Usually, it's a mix. It's a mix of a pure spiritual desire and something a bit more material and mundane. So it's separating that.
Maharaj, I have a question related to this morning class when we were speaking about this river of life with the ups and downs. And how do we help those who are close to us, mother, daughter, like who don't believe in God or don't take shelter and they don't have this spiritual vision and don't want to have that spiritual vision, and so they struggle, they have anxiety, and it's very difficult to communicate, to give the message that, you know, that we can learn something from that, this is for us to evolve. I have this question, and then I'm going to go away from all the subjects we have been discussing, but there's something I really would like to hear from you from a long time ago, and it's like, it's nothing related to this. When you went on this Braj Parikrama, I saw you went to a place where there are the footprints of Krishna. I saw the photo, and that really blew my mind. Like, you know, see that Krishna's footprints were there. So I don't know if you would like to comment something on that place and speak a bit of the significance of Krishna's lotus feet.
Okay, so yes, maybe we begin there. Yeah, in Vrindavan there are many places. It's not just one place. There are multiple places where it's Krishna's lotus feet are imprinted. And yeah, Krishna's lotus feet are amazing. There are many, many signs on Krishna's lotus feet. Just by meditating on Krishna's lotus feet, you can understand the transcendental ways in which Krishna is interacting with his devotees. On Krishna's lotus foot is a thunderbolt. Acharyas say it means if you take shelter of Krishna's lotus feet, then he decimates all of your karma. He just can remove it in an instant. On Krishna's lotus feet, so many things. There is a barley corn, which signifies nourishment. So all the inspiration, all the hunger, all the nourishment comes when we take shelter of Krishna's lotus feet. There's a disc which is said to kill the 6 enemies of lust, anger, greed, envy, like this. So, yes, it's one must have the vision. One must, when we go to all these places and we see all of these things, we also have to go with a heart which is dedicated to Krishna, a heart which has dedicated life in service to Krishna. Then we can see more of these places, we can appreciate more of these things. So, yes, it's very, you can go also. It's very powerful. And then on your other point of how do we help someone who doesn't have knowledge of, or who doesn't believe necessarily in God or higher purpose, how do we help them to deal with the ups and downs of life? And see, even if someone doesn't believe in Krishna, we can try to help them still see the struggles of life in a positive way. We can try to help them see, even if they don't want to believe in any transcendental perspective, we can try to help them see how in their life bad things led to good things. Bad things forced them to develop good things in order to counteract the bad things. In other words, we have to help them to see how there's something outside, something greater outside of the emotional pain that they're going through. And even if one doesn't believe in God, doesn't believe that there's a higher plan, doesn't believe that there's a benevolent hand which is organizing and orchestrating everything, still we can help them to understand that bad doesn't always mean bad. And that's a universal thing that many people can begin to grasp, even if they're not that spiritual. And so that's probably the best you can do. For someone who doesn't believe that there's a higher plan behind all of this, at least you can try to convince them that there's still something good that you can develop from this, and try to focus on that. But yeah, ultimately, only when we know that God is there and He's your best friend and He's the supreme controller, only then can we be peaceful. Otherwise we will be agitated. So then all you can do is offer friendship. What can we do? Yeah, it's okay. Last one, yeah.
One last question. Maharaj is traveling tomorrow. One last one, please. He has to go to bed.
It is very short. I just want to add something. When we were glorifying Mother Kulangana, and in the 80s she was in Vrindavan, and on the weekend she would come with us on Sankirtan. And she would get up at 3 o'clock or something, and she would change japa around the van, and we would tell her, please go somewhere else or chant less, and she less loud. And she was so fired up. It was so difficult for her to collect. We are collecting in football game, and we were working all day long, and she was so fired up. Every weekend, on top of the service she was doing in Vrindavan. also making sweets and pujari, different things she was making.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah, she was a great soul, and we were blessed to see her for so many years serving. Completely free from the propensity to criticize. It's like completely non-envious. It's like you can read about these things, but when you see someone like that, you just when Kaviraj Goswami goes into Radha Govinda temple, then he sees all these amazing Vaishnavas, and then there's one Haridas Pandya, and he looks at him and he says, Vaishnavera gunagrahi na dekaya dosh kaya manovakya kore Vaishnava santosh. And he's explaining the quality of this Haridas Pandya, and he says, Vaishnavera gunagrahi, he can only see the good things, na dekaya dosh. He can't, even if he tries, he can't. You can't see the bad. So dosha darshi, it's very powerful. So, of course, we're living in the practical world. We see things. We have to act. But I always saw in her that even if something was going wrong and she had to talk about it, she was very uncomfortable even to talk about it. Of course, something has to be said, it has to be said, but very uncomfortable to say anything negative. So that kind of a heart which is orientated in that way, in which one feels very uncomfortable when they have to say or do or address or even discuss something of a negative nature, indicates a very high level of purity. So, yeah. Thank you.
Polish body.
Yeah. Okay, so it's good. Yeah.
Talking about negative, sometimes we talk about things to be improved, and it might look
We can
negative.
continue tomorrow, Madam Gaurang. We can continue tomorrow. He's giving class tomorrow again. It's almost 9 o'clock.
Yes.
He's traveling tomorrow.
Thank you so much, everyone. It was a little unstructured, but sometimes it's nice just to also hear from everyone, and hopefully some points came up. Thank you so much. Shri Prabhupada.